Howdy. My name is Nonat, and I'm wearing a sweater because I'm very chilly because the heat is off because I haven't called the repairman to fix it, but I have a candle, and that'll keep me warm on these cold winter nights. There's something in Pathfinder 2e that goes completely underutilized, which is surprising because this is in the core rulebook of the game. I'm talking, of course, about multi-class archetypes. Now, it's definitely understandable. There are 20 or so multi-class archetypes, and then 130 plus other archetypes. But today, we're just gonna focus on the multi-class archetypes because they really do go underappreciated. They can do some cool stuff for your character, even if they're not quite as unique as the other archetypes in the system. Just take a step back and think of a simpler time, when the multi-class archetypes were all we had, and normal archetypes didn't exist. The fighter was still broken back then. If you're new to Pathfinder 2e or are just unaware, multi-class archetypes are not the same thing as something like D&D's multi-class system. When you take a multi-class archetype, you are only sacrificing one of your class feats. In exchange for that feat, you get a very small aspect of that class's power, but you also get all of your base class's level up bonuses. If you're playing, say, a rogue, and you take the wizard archetype dedication, all you get is 2 cantrips and proficiency in the Arcana skill, but you still get your level 2 rogue benefits. The more you dip into an archetype, the more benefits you'll see coming your way, usually at a deficit of about 2 or 3 levels compared to someone of that class. Continuing with the wizard example, the wizard archetype doesn't give you level 1 spells until character level 4. Whereas a normal wizard starts with a first level spell. But that level 1 wizard spell is now on a class that shouldn't be able to cast it. When the ranger starts slinging magic missiles, everyone gets scared. So today, I'm gonna go through every single class in the game and talk about what I think is the best multi-class archetype option for that class, and hopefully I'll inspire you to take a risk and try out some of these archetypes, even if on paper they look a little bit weak. Keep in mind, all of these character concepts are in a vacuum. Pathfinder 2e will always reward teamwork far more than a single character's build. Obviously, having an alchemist ally to give you items will always be stronger than multi-classing alchemist to make your own. I'm also trying to make this video as interesting as possible. If I were being truly honest, the best archetypes would always be spellcaster archetypes because either getting spells on martial classes is amazing, or spellcasters getting additional spells is also amazing. So these might not be the best min-max highest potential damage output builds, but they are simultaneously interesting and synergistic with the base class itself, at least one subclass of it. I'm also doing my best not to repeat archetypes as often as I can. A few of them will show up multiple times, but I've done my best to make sure most archetypes get a chance to shine. Going in alphabetical order, we start with the Alchemist, who I think benefits greatly from the Thaumaturge archetype. You've already got the high intelligence score for a bunch of different recall knowledge skills, and +2 damage from the Glimpse vulnerability action is great. The Alchemist sometimes struggles to get damage with their bombs, but because bombs are considered weapons, this +2 damage counts. This could also get really broken depending on the actual ruling. I wasn't able to get a reaction from Paizo with this, but maybe you in the comments can help me out. For example, if the Alchemist Fire inflicts persistent fire damage, and Glimpse vulnerability gives enemies a weakness to your weapon, because your weapon inflicted persistent fire damage, do they have a weakness to that persistent fire damage? This is very important for science. Someone made a great point on Twitter that if you have a flaming rune on a melee weapon, you could make this weakness to the fire damage from the flaming rune. So would that also apply to a persistent fire damage effect of a bomb? The implements granted by the Thaumaturge archetype are also incredibly strong, even if you can't get them until level 6. For example, the Amulet for Self-Protection is incredible damage reduction for the squishy Alchemist, or the Mirror is the Mirror. And by level 12, you can actually pump your will saves up to Master, something Alchemists can never achieve on their own. The Barbarian has two big weaknesses in their kit: accuracy and armor class. They will never be as accurate as a fighter, and while raging, the Barbarian loses armor class. How do you counteract that? Alchemist Multiclass. The Alchemist Multiclass gives you 4 recipes you can craft per day, but we're only gonna need 2 of them: the Drakeheart mutagen and the Blood of War mutagen. Now, they are mutagens, so you can only use one or the other at any given time, but they're situational. Are you fighting a bunch of little guys that you can crush with your raw damage? Use the Drakeheart mutagen. You're a barbarian. You are inclined to not build dexterity, which is rough because you can only wear up to medium armor, which rewards dexterity. However, if you can drink a Drakeheart mutagen, suddenly you've got +4 armor with a max of +2 dexterity, and you're still raging and ready to go. Suddenly your armor class gets bumped up, and these bunch of weaklings are struggling to hit you while you're having no trouble hitting back. Alternatively, you're fighting a big boss with a high armor class, drink that Warblood mutagen, get your +1 to attack rolls, maybe +2 if you're high enough level, and start making up that accuracy deficit compared to the fighter. And once your character level 6, you can already make the moderate version of both of these. That's 1 higher armor class and 1 higher to hit, right by level 6. The only hard part of this is getting the 14 intelligence needed to make it happen. Oh, also, reagents per day scale with character level. So by level 6, you have 8 reagents. Each reagent makes 2 items. You're making 16 items per day for maybe a 2 feet investment, and anything you don't use to make Drakeheart and Warblood can be used to make elixirs of life to keep yourself topped off. Mwah. Something that is severely holding the Bard back in Pathfinder 2e is their weapon proficiencies. Sure, you have the Warrior Muse to get a few more options, but that's really not a great subclass. But bards do tend to have high dexterity just so they have a decent armor class to protect themselves. You know what that lines up really well with? The Gunslinger archetype. The bard's action economy usually involves spending an action to keep Inspire Courage up, which happens to line up very well with a ranged weapon that needs to be reloaded. Take your firearm, shoot, reload, Inspire Courage. Shoot, reload, Inspire Courage. You've got a great loop there. And especially if you choose the Pistolero subclass, you'll get +2 to initiative, a free 10-foot repositioning, and hopefully with that bonus, you'll be going first, getting that Inspire Courage up and giving everyone else a bonus to damage on their first turn of the encounter. Also, once you're level 10, you can get Raconteur's Reload as a Pistolero. Demoralizing every time you reload is phenomenal as a bard who probably has an 18 charisma. For the champion, I've chosen the Monk multi-class archetype. Stay with me. I was looking through all of the stances because a lot of them say requirement, you are unarmored, which is not exactly in the champion's wheelhouse. Until I found the Gorilla stance, which does not have that requirement. While in Gorilla stance, you can be wearing armor like a champion's full plate mail. With the powerful fist feature, you can be wielding a shield, full plate mail, and have a 1d6 fist attack, meaning you can never be disarmed. And if you enter Gorilla stance, suddenly it's a d8 fist. I will fully say, this build takes a little bit longer to get going, but once you have Flurry of Blows at level 10, on top of your champion's reaction and raising shield, you're off to the races. The champion who wants to raise their shield seriously suffers from poor action economy, so being able to Flurry of Blows, getting 2 attacks for 1 action, really helps. Hell, they can even pump their reflex saves to master. So I'll be perfectly honest, the Cleric was probably the hardest one to recommend an archetype to because Wisdom might be the most useless skill in the game outside of like medicine checks. But I've settled on the Druid archetype. Sure, it's a lot more spell slots, which is something I said I was going to try to avoid in this video, but this had to be my exception. But on top of the extra spell slots, it also gets them access to the Primal Tradition, which has a bunch of new offensive options that the cleric doesn't usually get. Right in the cantrips, you get Electric Arc and Produce Flame. Divine casters knowingly struggle with poor offensive cantrips, so getting those onto your kit that utilize the same ability score when casting them is great. You also can't deny that most cleric domain focus spells really suck, so getting some of the order spells like Crushing Ground or Tempest Surge can be a bump up the cleric needs for their focus points. Druids have the same issue as clerics. They're a wisdom caster. Wisdom isn't used that much, but I think I've settled on the Fighter multiclass. Notably, Fighter is often thought of as one of the least useful multiclasses. However, I think the Druid can make great use of it. First off, you get to use better weapons in human form. That's nothing to sneeze at, might get a better damage die than that quarterstaff or that club, but even better, you can take the Attack of Opportunity feat. This lets you make attacks of opportunity, which is hard to get for a lot of classes. Druids never get Attack of Opportunity unless you take an archetype like this. However, there's no restriction saying you need to be in human form to utilize Attack of Opportunity, meaning this Tyrannosaurus Rex suddenly has Attack of Opportunity. Also, if you just want to be a little tankier, you can take the Fighter Resilience feat to get 9 or 12 extra hit points. The fighter doesn't need any help, but I knew going into this that the fighter would want some kind of divine spellcasting class to get access to some excellent buffs they can put on themselves, and I settled on the Worm-Blessed Sorcerer multiclass. For just 2 feats, the Dedication and Basic Spellcasting, you're getting a first level heal spell, a second level heal spell for a total of 3d8 plus 24 self-healing per day, and the Crème de Résistance, that's not the saying at all, Piece de Résistance, Heroism. +1 to everything on the fighter that they can give themselves before combat starts because it lasts for 10 minutes is amazing. And if you already have a bard or someone giving you +1, boom, you can choose Haste instead. It might not be a divine spell, but it sure is on the Worm-Blessed spell list, which is fair game. And if you feel like it, you can also invest a feat into getting the Dragon Claw's focus spell, because the fighter can actually make use of those. The Gunslinger was shockingly hard to figure out, because gunslingers want to do one thing: shoot people. However, gunslingers do want one thing more than anything else, and that's a critical hit, with pretty much every firearm in the game having the fatal trait. Critical hits will usually lead to doing almost triple damage compared to normal double damage. If only the gunslinger could see their attack before they committed to it. Boom! Investigator archetype. Devise a stratagem. See if it crits. Oh, you rolled low? I guess just shoot somebody else instead for a second chance at a critical hit. This gets around so many issues of the gunslinger. If you normal hit or, God forbid, miss with your firearm, you're stuck reloading it. So what better than to spend an action to check and see if your attack is gonna hit? For a 2 feat investment, this is a gunslinger's dream. Make every shot count. The inventor's a little boring, but it just makes sense. We're going with the Alchemist multiclass once again. Regardless of which inventor subclass you pick between construct, armor, and weapon, you're gonna have some kind of shortcoming, whether it's your hit accuracy, your armor class, or something else. And with things like Drakeheart and Warblood and other alchemical items you can make, it's a great way to make up your shortcomings. Plus, you've probably already got an 18 intelligence, meaning right at level 2, you can make 12 items per day. Elixirs of life, various stat boosters like Quicksilver mutagens, whatever you want to do. There's not much else to say. You basically become a more physically capable alchemist for the sacrifice of a little bit weaker alchemical item crafting. It honestly almost feels like its own hybrid class. The Alchemist. I knew what I was picking for Investigator before I even wrote this script, and that is the Rogue multi-class archetype, because with this, you can do absolutely anything. If you're level 2 with 18 intelligence as an investigator and you pick up this archetype, you can already have 13 trained skill proficiencies out of 17 skills, lore withstanding. You can even spend class feats to take skill mastery for even more skills. Also, you get bonus sneak attack. If you can stack your strategic strike on a flat-footed target, hey, that's an extra D6 on all of your attacks once you're level 6. But let's be real, you do it for the skills. The Magus was the easiest choice in the entire list, the Wizard archetype. It makes up for their biggest shortcoming, which is their lack of spell slots. Maguses, Magi, only get 4 spell slots per day at max level. If you invest 5 feats into this, suddenly you get 14 additional slots. It's a heavy feat investment, I won't lie, and it's over the course of an entire 1 to 20 campaign, but for a class that needs spell slots to do their big cool thing, you want extra spell slots. The Monk was another one where a lot of options just didn't feel great, and I'm still not perfectly happy with where I landed. I find the Monk to be one of the hardest classes to multi-class with. But I decided on the Swashbuckler because as long as you have Panache, you can just get a free +1 damage to all of your attacks, and you're using Agile Finesse Fists, probably, so you're attacking at least 2 or 3 times per turn for +1 damage on all of those attacks forever. Sure, you need to tumble through to get that panache, but you're a monk. You're probably amazing at acrobatics. Also, pick up Swashbuckler's Riposte. Monks have some of the highest armor class in the game as long as you have a high dexterity score. High dexterity, high armor class, a lot of critical misses you get to punch back on. The Oracle! Y'all, I don't know how to play Oracle. A lot of y'all defended it in my class complexity graph tier list, but man, the Oracle's complex. But we're picking the Psychic multi-class for literally just one reason. 3 focus points at level 1. You probably won't use the Psi cantrip Amp because that won't progress your curse, and if you're an Oracle, you want to progress your curse, which is part of why it's so hard to archetype as an Oracle, but at least you do get additional spell slots that also use Charisma to cast, and they are from a different spell list. You now have Divine and Occult spells to bring something new to the table. The Psychic. Once again, the main reason we're choosing this one is for extra spell slots, and we are choosing the Bard multi-class. It's extra spell slots, it's also cast using Charisma, and honestly, the Psychic needs the help. Did you know Psychics only get 2 spells per day of each spell level? So just 1 or 2 extra spells per level will go a long way for this class. Plus, at level 8, you can get Inspire Courage. Why not? For the Ranger, I picked the Barbarian multi-class because, fun fact, you don't need to dual wield agile weapons to be an effective flurry ranger. That means you're dual wielding martial weapons like longswords, which are getting the full +2 damage from rage and attacking multiple times per turn at reduced penalties. Oh, and guess what? Did you know the Barbarian multi-class lets you get the Instinct ability? Yeah, a giant Instinct Barbarian multi-classed Ranger can be dealing a flat 6 bonus damage on all of their flurry attacks. That's insane! You can even get tankier with the extra hit points from the Resiliency feat. That's wild. Only attacking at, I think, -3, -6 with dual longswords for D8 plus strength plus 6? Terrifying. I love it. The Rogue in combat relies on flanking, and what better way to get a flanking partner than by controlling them yourself? And that's why I've chosen the Summoner multi-class for the Rogue specifically. Let's face it, the Eidolon granted by this multiclass is really weak. It is straight out weaker than a normal Summoner Eidolon, which it should be, but it still qualifies for flanking. You unfortunately never get the Act Together option that a Summoner has, so positioning might still be a little awkward, but for 3 actions, you can both take a move, flank a target, and then attack for your sneak attack. Plus, the extra spells don't hurt either, and Charisma goes a long way for a rogue. The Sorcerer gets the unique, exciting, and I'm gonna stop lying to you. The Sorcerer can just utilize any other charisma-based spellcaster. I don't think any of them are inherently better than the others. The Sorcerer just... they're good enough on their own. You want Inspire Courage? Take a Bard. You want, I don't know, an extra focus point? Take Psychic, and Oracle is also there. Just take your extra spell slots and be happy. The Summoner is actually a little bit exciting with the Champion archetype. Finally, you can actually wear armor. One of the Summoner's biggest issues is their multi-ability dependence. They are mad. Because of this, trying to find some way to fit ability scores into dexterity can be tough. Sure, if you put them into dexterity, you might have some armor class, but then you have nothing for strength and you can't really fight alongside your Eidolon aside from throwing out occasional cantrips. With this archetype, you can actually afford to put a little bit into strength and wear heavy armor without the issue of needing a high dexterity. Put on a piece of armor with a +2 dex max, get that flat bonus, and it's great. Plus, they can utilize Lay on Hands in a really cool way. It becomes a reach spell of sorts. If you're in the back line and your Eidolon takes a hit, you can Lay on Hands yourself, healing your Eidolon because you share hit points. Also, if you're close enough, you can technically reduce damage to yourself by utilizing the champion's reaction on your Eidolon, and I think that's really awesome. The Swashbuckler is taking the Monk archetype. Congratulations, you are now a Swashbuckler that cannot be disarmed, is still hitting for D8s, and getting their full precise strike damage. Enter any 1d8 agile or finesse stance, flurry of blows, getting extra precise strike damage on all of these, it's disgusting. Not to be repetitive, but it just worked out this way, the Thaumaturge is also the Monk archetype. Just replace the Precise Strikes feature with the Exploit Vulnerability feature. Make them vulnerable to your attacks and then bonk them over and over again to keep triggering that extra damage. I'm actually playing one of these right now, and let me tell you, it's nasty. The Witch, kind of repeating again, is the same as the Summoner with the Champion archetype. You can utilize your Familiar to get a lot done to the point where your lowered movement speed from wearing heavy armor doesn't matter as much. This frees up your dexterity score so you can put it into other things like maybe wisdom or charisma just for a more skill-focused character. Additionally, that lowered movement speed doesn't even matter at level 6 because you can take Divine Ally, which gives you a mount that can move for you. Really simple, but really effective. And to close us off, the Wizard gets the Witch archetype. I know, you might not have predicted this one, but you do get a Familiar if you didn't have one already. What's important to note here is this archetype taken is not inherently about the extra spell slots. It's about the extra spell tradition, which can make your wizard completely unpredictable. Take a witch patron that grants you divine spells, and everyone's gonna freak out when your wizard casts Searing Light on the Devil. Searing Light on the Devil sounds like the best Christian rock band. And there you have it, my top multi-class archetype for every class in the game. Hopefully this inspired some of you to try them out or even get theory crafting with multi-class archetypes. Honestly, once the APG and other normal archetypes came out, I almost forgot these existed and didn't even look at them for a long time. But there's some cool stuff here. I almost wish they could get expanded somehow. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. I love to hear y'all with your theories and arguments against what I've said. It's so cool and I learned so much from you guys. Shout out to my YouTube members and patrons for supporting the channel financially. If you would like to join them, there is a join button right below the video you can click. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.